Hey guys, welcome to Garry's Shortlist. Today we're having a great conversation with Martin Patience. Martin Patience has been in the industry, in the construction industry in Australia and the UK for many, many years and brings a wealth of experience. We are going to have a chat about the aged care sector in Australia. Very interesting insight into the aged care sector in construction, and we will also have a chat about apprentices, something Martin has been very passionate about. So stay tuned, sit back and enjoy this podcast. Thanks, Garry. Martin, thanks for coming along today, mate. It's a very woolly day out there in Sydney, and I'm glad you got here and I found you safe and well. It'd be really good, Martin, to kick off and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing of late. And if you're comfortable to share with us some of your history, how you started in the industry and where you've brought yourself through the construction industry in Australia.
Okay, good to see you as well, guys.
Likewise.
Well, if you want life history in construction, I can give you life history. I started as an apprentice carpenter when I was 17. I left school in year 11. I decided I didn't want to start school, so I did an apprenticeship, and I never looked back from there.
Wow.
I think it was a really good founding thing to do, an apprenticeship. And in the UK, the apprenticeships are only 3 years long, not 4 as they are in Australia.
Okay.
So I worked for a company called YJ Lovell, and during my tenure with YJ Lovell, we celebrated 220 years in business. So it was a very old, established company in the UK, and
Wow.
Unfortunately they're not around anymore. But they survived probably 250 years.
Wow.
But it was a good company to work for because they believed in training people and then bringing them through the system. So I actually, although I was an apprentice carpenter, I never actually worked one day as a carpenter. The day I finished my apprenticeship, they re-indenture you there, and I became what they called a trainee site manager, which is really a cadet, we call here these days, because that entailed going through all the different divisions within the company, estimating, planning, with the QS out on site. So it was a really, really good training place. And I spent another 3 years as a cadet going through the system. And then when I finished my traineeship, they offered me a job as a planner. So I actually worked in the planning and the logistics department of the company, involved in tenders, projects, going out and being involved in that. And mainly in the city of London, right in the guts of the city, and we were, I think, the second or third biggest builder within the city of London at the time. So got involved in some very complex projects, dug up plague pits, cemeteries. It was a really interesting period of time. That's where I started, and I just before I emigrated to Australia, which I'll talk about in a minute, is I worked on a project where the site manager was really ill, and I ended up taking over the job and finished the job as a site manager over Blackfriars Bridge tube station, which was a really interesting project. It was an office building over a live railway station, so it was quite a difficult project. And the sad thing for me, I suppose, just to show how old I'm getting, I went back a few years with my kids and went round London, and the building's been knocked down already. so no defects, no evidence left. The building's gone, and there's a building much bigger there now. So that's how cities progress.
And you came out to Australia when?
1986. The year before 85, I just happened to see an advert in a paper saying, it's Concrete Constructions were advertising for people to come to Australia, and I thought, that sounds interesting. And I had a yearning to go and work overseas at the time, because the Middle East was really booming at the time. There was various different things I could have done, and so I saw that opportunity. I applied for the job and interviewed and got the job. And part of the conditions of employment was that you actually had to emigrate. And so I came to Australia in '86 with a visa. So I had a citizen. Literally within 2 years, I'd become a citizen of Australia in 1988. So it was a decision I had made. It wasn't really a considered decision at the time. I thought it just looked interesting. And I'd always loved watching cricket on TV, and I saw the Ashes series, the guys on the hill and, drinking beer with their shirts off, and I thought,
I've got to go there.
I've got to go there, and I've got to do that. And actually, lucky enough, I did do that before they actually dug the hill up and put seats there. So I was there the night that England won a one-day game when Alan Lamb hit 19 off the last over. Bruce Reid was bowling, and it was a night that I won't forget. It was a really good experience. I think I got everything was thrown at me because we had this big sign saying England whitewashes, and because we'd won the Ashes then as well, and I think I just got cans, I got everything thrown at me that night, but It was just so much fun. It was good.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So you come out with Concrete Constructions?
Yeah, so I worked in Canberra and worked in a Canberra office down there.
Right.
Initially doing programming, planning, and again I ended up finishing a project as a site manager because again the same thing happened actually. So I finished that job, and then I really wanted to come back up to Sydney because I'd come into Sydney, I saw what Sydney was like. I spent 2 weeks here before going down to Canberra, and I realised I love Sydney, and Canberra at the time wasn't that appealing to me. It was in the middle of winter, it was cold.
Still is.
Yeah, and it still is. I mean, and today, actually, Canberra's a great place now. There's plenty to do now, but at the time, it was a barren wasteland.
Yeah.
It was hard to find a bar, outside Civic. So I came up to Sydney and I worked on I worked on 135 King Street predominantly, which is a tower block in the CBD. And so it was a really good experience, working in the middle of the CBD, and I started off, I planned the job and I ended up being the structures foreman. So I ended up taking the structure up there.
Wow.
So in the mid-80s, mid to the end of 80s, there was so much going on around the CBD, and there was a lot of movement of people. So the project manager used to move to, say, a different company, and then used to drag half his team. So there was a bit of a period of time when I sort of worked at Centennial Plaza with John Hollands and Gervins, where you had people just dragged you around a bit. So I had a bit of that. And worked on a lot of high-rise buildings from the sort of from 86 really, beginning of 87 till 91. 4 years of and that was hard work. I mean, it was 7 days a week. You couldn't do it as a married man. I mean, you really got flogged. So it was interesting times, but I learnt a lot.
Awesome.
I learnt a lot. So. Yeah, I can just fast forward on. There was, in fact, around 91, 92, there was a massive depression within the construction industry. It was, so you did what you could to get through, and I ended up working with a Brazilian property developer building blocks of units on the beach at Manly and a few other places in Mossman, and that got me through a few years, and then really, I suppose it ended up at Grinley, and started there as a project manager, went to construction manager, and then bought into the company, became a director, and ended up being the CEO. There was 14 years of my life in that. That's business.
A great journey.
Yeah, It was a really good. I really enjoyed my time at Grinley. It was a good period of time. I ended up selling out the business, and then happened to see Jamie Crookes at the races actually, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Just sold out." And he said, "Well, we're trying to get into aged care within Crookes. We want to set that division up." And hence I'm nearly 6 years at Richard Crookes in aged care, and aged care is an area that I've always found fascinating. I saw my father go through aged care in the UK, and it was sad. Yeah. The facilities were disgusting. Yeah. And I really thought, well, we can do better than this. And the industry, to be fair, in Australia is so far in front of what was in the UK at that time. I mean, although the facilities were pretty bad, if you go back 10 years plus, maybe a little bit further back there, it was pretty poor.
In Australia?
In Australia, yeah. I mean, but now, the new buildings that are being built are very sophisticated, they're technical, and they're places that you could see if you require that service, you could go to now. I mean,
And the Royal Commission?
Well, the Royal Commission obviously has highlighted many things within aged care, funding, It's probably the biggest thing for all providers. The budget is next week, and it's believed, they say it's going to be called the aged care budget. They've already highlighted, I think, $10 billion of extra funding into the industry over the next 4 years, but probably still not enough. We are facing a crisis in aged care. We have a massive population of baby boomers coming through right now.
So what's the crisis? The crisis
is under supply. I mean, we've got 227,000 beds in Australia, and there's just this massive wave of population which is going to go on for the next 10 years. So it's going to ramp up severely.
I vaguely recall you saying to me a few years ago that if, and correct me if I'm wrong please, but I vaguely recall you saying that if every builder stopped building what they were building right now and just focused on aged care, we still wouldn't have enough beds.
No, you still couldn't. And the problem is there's not enough. The speed of planning and getting through and approvals, it's the handbrake. I mean, and money at the moment. I mean, all the providers need to have surety on their revenue and to understand their business cases. So the government needs to give that surety. And there's many recommendations from the Royal Commission about ideal size of a facility, the way operationally, just the level of compliance is huge in aged care, because you have many things that you have to comply with. It is a very technical industry, and probably 50, nearly 60% of providers are not making any money. They're actually going bust. So,
wow.
And it's a very fragmented market as well. There's lots of small players, mum and dad facilities out there, and there's a few corporates in the market. But it is still very fragmented.
Wow. Like
75% of all aged care facilities in New South Wales are over 25 years old, and they all need doing up, to compete and just to offer a great amenity.
So. I think you hit it on the head there in terms of the facility itself, and it was an eye opener for me working with you at the time. To see some of the links and some of the sophistication and technology that's entering that space. And at the time I was naive enough to think, wow, this is a bit over the top, right? However, I must say now, as I'm getting older and as my parents got older, it was like, I would expect that those sort of facilities would be available if you were in a position to be able to offer those to your loved ones.
I think you find that if you're looking for a place and a really sort of nice place, it's hard to get in. I mean, there's waiting lists to get into good quality facilities. I mean, you could probably get into a one that hasn't been upgraded yet, but as we know, as we get older, what our parents and what we will accept is completely different to what our grandparents and the previous generations accept. So, we are demanding, us baby boomers are going to be demanding on what facilities are being offered. And we will want Wi-Fi and we want access, So, but aged care is actually is morphing into more of a high care in the end of the day. You'll see less people in low care in the aged care facilities. You'll see more people move into retirement style apartments and villages. It's pretty low penetration rate at the moment. There's only probably not even 6% of people over 65 are in a retirement unit situation. So I think you'll see that increasing. In the States, it's double that. In New Zealand, it's 7-8%. They've got their market quite well set up there. And then what will happen is that low care facilities or will be brought into a retirement unit. So which would be outside of the government funded regime. So aged care is 80% funded by government. So it costs a lot to keep someone in an aged care facility. So it's going to be a more user pay model, and the government is pushing down the line of home care packages, and that will be delivered in a retirement unit. So the new buildings being built will have adaptability built into them, so you can actually age age in place.
Right.
And I think you'll find that a lot of providers will start to build less aged care facilities and more units of retirement type units, villa style properties.
Yeah. So the facilities is one aspect, I guess, but I think I saw on the news this week that the resourcing that these facilities have, e.g. the people that take care of people, is another ball game, and we don't have to run down that rabbit hole. But
well, that's interesting because I'm actually on the board of an aged care provider, a non-for-profit community-based organisation called COPWA, which is in Coringa, it's in Roseville, and so seeing the industry from an operator point of view is an interesting eye opener. I mean, and really the key to a successful operation is keeping your occupancy high and keeping your staff costs in control. So there's always that dichotomy of level of care, the staff, and a lot of the staff are fantastic, very kind people, but the problem is there's not enough of them.
Right.
And so we really need to push down the line of training. I know in COVID times in New Zealand they used a lot of money to actually subsidise training in aged care space. We didn't do that here.
Okay.
We really need to boost our numbers up in that space because the need is there. And
And how do you see aged care moving forward in maybe the short term and the longer term in terms of demand? Like we've spoken about there, the demand's known. How do you see that unfolding? Is it something that the construction industry is going to trip over themselves constantly to deliver?
Yeah, well, it's interesting what you just said, the demand is known, and that is a thing within the market. The demand is known. We know the population. We know that people are getting older. We know more people are going to live longer. They're going to reach 100. More people are going to reach 100. More people are going to reach 90. Mainly women, but because obviously us men actually tend to die a bit earlier, and that's a fact, right? So, but we will have to tailor and build facilities for the future. And but I, as I said, I think the model going forward is going to be more of an integrated facility where you have retirement and aged care co-located.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of examples out there now of that. But also there's going to be a more sophisticated offering. There's going to be more sort of a lifestyle facilities rather than calling them aged care or retirement. It's going to be a lifestyle. And so you're selling a lifestyle to someone who's probably early 70s, kids have all gone, you got your property, downsize, and then move into a really nice unit, and then your care is brought to you.
Yes.
And then when you really need high demand, dementia, palliative, end of life care, that's when you'll move into an aged care facility. I think you'll see that become more the model going forward.
Right. So Martin, with your aged care experience now, that's obviously very well respected. Can I ask you, with your construction hat on now, in terms of the competitiveness in the industry and the players that have entered, I guess, particularly around the large tier 2 size builders that have either entered or have been in that space for quite some time. How is it in terms of competition as opposed to being in the residential sector or the commercial sector? How do you see that?
I think people underestimate what it takes to build an aged care facility per se. They're very technical buildings, and the way I explain to people is they're like a hospital with a hotel overlay. So it's not a hospital and it's not a hotel, but you put them together.
Right.
That's what you get.
Good analogy.
And I think the with COVID, it's actually emphasised the need to better isolate and actually treat people on campus. So there will be, I think, more hospital sort of facilities that will come into aged care. You might have a wing, where you can isolate down. Your air conditioning systems will change a little bit, so you can actually blank off areas, bit oxygen, be able to give medical care, medical care within an aged care facility.
That's interesting.
But as a general observation of competition and builders out there, I think people do underestimate what it does take, and I think a few people come into the market and try to buy themselves a bit of market share, get burnt, think twice, oh, maybe we shouldn't be in this market. But that, and then that disrupts the market for a while, because people see that is the value of the construction cost, but when it isn't really the true value, people have come in and actually lost money. So it takes a while. And I think our customers, who are our clients, are far more savvy now. A lot of the non-for-profits have literally corporatised themselves, and have property teams in there that actually do understand what it does take to build, and are more discerning when they choose their builder now, because they look for experience, they look for someone who's done it before, they look for someone who can to be a genuine partner and give them advice on what the latest cutting edge technology that's going in there, which maybe another provider's doing and they're not. So they look for this information as well. So,
and you recently completed your team and yourself very high end residential place in the eastern suburbs.
Yeah, we built a project at Montefiore in Randwick, which per unit cost is the most expensive project Crookes have ever done, Richard Crookes have ever done, and that's greater than the Opera development we're just finishing, and Loftus down there. So, and mainly because of technology. There is a massive amount of technology within that building which you don't see. It's all in the ceilings, it's all in the walls. But what they've done, again, they have the foresight to build in things where they can scale up. And they've put the backbone in to be able to do that. So they've made that investment up front. And and plus, it's a beautifully finished building. It's a really nice facility, and it'd be a great place to live.
Absolutely, absolutely, in the eastern suburbs there.
Yeah, that's right. Near the Randwick racecourse, you can see the racecourse from.
Well, you could have a punt.
That's right. Wander down the road,
screaming on your balcony.
In fact, I think there's a quite high profile identity in the racing industry actually lives in one of the units. So
we weren't the first to think about
he must wander down there. But it's and that was a wonderful experience. I think it's set a standard within retirement unit, which is co-located on an aged care facility block, where they've done a really nice project, and I think it's going to be very successful.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah,
that was a great project to see, and I think for the average punter like myself that doesn't know a lot about aged care, to understand that there are those facilities out there, and that's where the demand is heading in the high end, and obviously will continue to do so. I think that's interesting. It's not all about the low bucks care. The other thing that's really interested me with one of your comments is that how tough it is for those facilities to make money, privately run or non-for-profit, whatever it may be. But I think that the general perception of people out there are, they must be making squillions out of this because we pay X amount to take care of mum or dad, and they must be making squillions. So that was interesting for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's out there. The stats are out there, and I think there is very varied abilities in probably managing these facilities out there. There's going to be a lot of consolidation go on in the market in the next 5 years. You'll just start to see the flow of money. I mean, I can see there's some people starting to look at aged care and to invest, especially recently when the stock market was low. There's a few people looking to buy in when the price was right for them, I suppose. But there is definitely going to be consolidation happening in the market in the future. It has to, because the cost of compliance, the Royal Commission has highlighted compliance, and the cost of that compliance will be high.
Yeah, without doubt.
Yeah, and you need to have scale to spread the cost of that compliance. So the 1 and 2 facility owners will struggle.
So Martin, you mentioned early in the piece that you were an apprentice back in the day, just like myself, and I think it's a bit of a dying art And I also know that you've been very passionate in when I worked with you, and quite vocal, I guess, about what's happening with apprentices in Australia, and we could argue about TAFE and the like. Can you tell us a little bit about where your passion lies with apprenticeships and where you see it maybe moving forward?
Yeah, okay. Well, the government obviously is pumping quite a lot of money into apprenticeships now. I think it's a bit late. I mean, we should have been probably doing this 10 years plus ago. My big thing with apprenticeships and apprentices is we have a duty of care, right? As an industry, and as we get older, we need to have people that's going to replace us and to come through. And I find there's a lot of short-sighted building companies out there who are not willing to invest, and it is an investment. And I think it's an investment on two fronts: the investment in the skills of our industry, but it's in the investment in our culture. If you employ a guy 18, I always used to try and employ guys who've done year 12, because I was severely affected by a kid called Joel Exner, who fell off a roof many years ago, and he was 16, 17, second day at work, died. And it affected me greatly, that accident, and I thought, I just can't do it to myself to employ a 16, 17-year-old kid and put him on the building site. So I always had a rule that I wanted someone to finish year 12, so they were well-rounded education-wise. They didn't have to be a superstar, but just finished and had that maturity, a little bit more maturity when they're 18. And I always used to look, when I used to employ, and I used to employ a lot of apprentices, I always used to look at their school reports, and just, to me, it was about attitude. And so, the main thing was to come with the right attitude and have a clear mind and be willing to listen and learn. So I believe that we really, really need to ramp up apprenticeships. Within the NBA now, we're just about hitting record numbers, nearly 300 apprentices within the NBA. Obviously.
So the master builders.
Yeah, sorry, the master builders. I was the president up till about 18 months ago, and I've been on the board of the NBA probably, I think, 16 years. So my tenure is just about to end at the end of this year. I will step off the board. But one of the big things we've always pushed is apprenticeships and training within the industry. And it is a passion of mine, and I like to touch on the culture bit. If you train someone well, you bring them through, they're part of your team. You end up, the apprentices end up being lean hand carpenters, your sub foreman, foreman, site managers, and on project managers. I mean, I've seen them go through, and I really pushed within the master builders a pathway where someone could finish an apprenticeship to then do a degree, and that pathway is there, but it just didn't take off with gusto that I thought it would do, and I think COVID probably curtailed that. I mean, everyone seems to stop thinking during COVID, but now we're the fog is lifting and we're coming out again, and the industry is actually picking up quite well, and I think now is the time to really think about what our needs and requirements are in the future. What
do you think the handbrake has been for organisations with apprentices? Do you think it's been a bit of industrial leverage?
I just see it as companies see it as a cost, not an investment.
Right.
They're quite willing to go out and pay huge headhunter fees, for foremen and site managers. But if they actually start at grassroots level and get kids, train them through, let them be your future foreman, and let them grow, train them well, you've got the best employees you could ever have. You've got people who are loyal, who are well trained, you understand what their strengths and weaknesses are, they're a known factor, you could put them on the site and you know with quite a lot of certainty what the end result's going to be.
Martin, I remember a really strong quote that stuck out to me, and it was, what if I train all my people and they leave? And part B of that was, what if I don't train them and they stay?
Yeah, and it's a fair point. I mean, culture, companies live and die by their culture, right? And culture is a very, very hard thing to get right. And I think that starts with training and retaining people, and having that core of people that everyone looks to. This is how we behave around here. This is how we do things. We do the right way. If you don't have those people within your business, I think you're set to do, and bad things will happen.
So you're clearly passionate about apprentices. That's fantastic. For anyone listening, very simply, what could be some steps they take to go and find an apprentice tomorrow?
Well, one, which I think the government is actually doing now, is actually making a huge investment in there. It's quite cost was always a big prohibitor. So there's offerings out there now which massively subsidise taking on an apprentice, and I think companies should be taking advantage of this.
Absolutely.
Now. There's a big driver. The government has stated they want to get the unemployment rate down to literally full employment. That's their goal, and that's the way they see we're going to ride our ways through COVID and get our bank balances back to positive. And the main way of doing that, I reckon, is by training people in apprenticeships, and then that's an investment in the future. And we're ready. We've got a ready workforce going forward.
Yeah.
So, as I said, I think builders, and I'm talking about building apprenticeships now. They should see it's an investment, not a cost.
And as you say, if they reach out, can they reach out to the master builders directly to hire an apprentice?
Definitely, yeah. There's and as I said, the government has put a lot of money in. There's some great offerings out there now, and well subsidised. We at the master builders, we've always taken the view we don't make any money out of the training scheme. Well, it's marginally. It's a break even, really, a break even. Point within the master builders is we don't do it to make money. That's the point. So I think it is cost effective. There is ways of doing it, and I think it's not just the master builders. The HIA do it. There's other providers out there who can give you good people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Martin, I need to. We're running out of time here, but I really need to thank you so much for coming in today. It's been a pleasure to obviously catch up with you again, and it's been a pleasure on this level to introduce you to the listeners here today. So thanks again for coming in, mate. I really appreciate it, and I hope we catch up for a beer shortly.
Yeah, and hopefully Manly beat Roosters next time we play.
Okay, we'll edit that. Cheers, mate. So thanks for listening, guys. That was Martin Patience. I hope you got a lot out of that podcast. I certainly did. I certainly got a lot about the aged care sector. A lot of things that I didn't know about the aged care sector, and I've been in the construction industry for a long time. So I hope you enjoyed that podcast. Stay tuned. We'll see you again real soon.